Good morning, biology, and welcome to chapter 21, which is all about ecosystems. So, we spent a lot of time talking about individual organisms and communities and populations, and we're going to get even broader and just look at really, really broad systems called ecosystems. So, these are really big uh, chunks of area, usually, that house a lot of organisms. And we're going to look at what kind of organisms they can house, what kind of environmental factors they need, and that kind of thing. So you might have heard of biomes, uh, but what we're going to talk about is a lot of biome stuff to start with, and then we're going to talk about marine stuff afterwards. So what is a biome? Biomes are terrestrial ecosystems that contain smaller but related ecosystems inside of them. And biomes can be found in more than one place around the world. Looking at this map here, you can see that there is a uh, a desert biome. This kind of uh, orangey color here. There's one in America. There's one in South America here. There's one over in more Asian area. So each place that you find a desert in the world, you're going to see that it has similar habitat, similar climate, and because of that, there are creatures that live in the desert that have similar adaptations. Maybe lots of them burrow into the sand during the day so that they stay cool. So what characterizes a biome? Biomes are commonly identified by their dominant plant life. Whatever plant life is most commonly seen in the area is usually what we're going to look at first. But what creates biomes are abiotic factors, and these are things like average rainfall, elevation, and average temperature. These latitude also plays a really big role in here, so it could definitely be something that you add to that list. The first biome we're going to talk about is the tundra, and on each of these I have a map of where they are in the world. This is the purple on here is the tundra. And tundra are large, cold, treeless biomes found in the north and can be found down in the south on Antarctica. But these guys are characterized by having a structure called permafrost. And permafrost is a permanently frozen layer of soil underneath the surface that never thaws out throughout the year. And in fact, most of the soil, even that's on top of the permafrost, only thaws for about 8 weeks of the year in the tundra. So most of these exist in the North Hemisphere. There's some in the South Hemisphere on Antarctica. It is the coldest biome of the biomes. Some creatures that inhabit the tundra are these ones shown here, but there's not many trees to be found because permafrost prevents their roots from moving into the soil, and also a lot of plant life. There's very little precipitation, and the growing season is 2 months. Most of the precipitation is snow instead of rain, so that's not as usable for plants. Despite this, we still have some really hardy grasses, things called sedges and mosses that are common, and then we have a whole bunch of animals that can live there too, or that travel in and out of the area. And these include caribou, muskox, snowy owls, arctic foxes, and snowshoe hares. There's other things on here like snow leopards and bald eagles and walruses and stoats, but those are just a couple examples. All right, the next biome is the tropical forest. This is a biome that occurs near the equator between 23.5 degrees north and 23.5 degrees south. This is, if you're a geography buff, this is the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. And this area is known as, collectively, the tropics. So, this area has a stable year-long temperature. It has lots and lots of rainfall, and it has only two seasons. It has wet season and a dry season. Because of this, this is the most productive biome, meaning there's a lot of biomass, meaning there's a lot of plants that are growing really fast and doing really well. And speaking of plant life, there's a lot of competition amongst plants in the tropical forests for light. So most trees are going to 164 or 197 feet tall, and their limbs and their foliage creates this canopy here that you can see in this bottom picture. This really thick layer shades the forest floor below, so there's not a lot of plant life going on down there. You do get what are called epiphytes, and this is like this orchid here, but they're plants like mosses, orchids, and bromeliads that live on the plant branches of trees but make their own food. So they still photosynthesize, but their roots don't need to be in soil. So who lives in the tropical rainforest? These biomes, because they have so much productivity, have some of the highest species richnesses. A hectare, which is the size of 2 football fields, may be home to 300 tree species alone, not even including the animals. If you were in a deciduous forest, you would see probably 12 species of trees in that same amount of area. It also has many unique animal species, such as these ones up here. But something fun about the rainforest is it's estimated that there's 1 million species of tree-living beetle alone. And here we have a picture of the Hercules beetle. He's very fun looking guy there. But tons and tons of beetles and other kind of arboreal animals there. All right, temperate forests. These ones are characterized by having distinct seasons, so spring, summer, fall, and winter. They're usually characterized by the type of tree that is most common in that forest. So it's going to be coniferous trees where they bear seeds and cones, tend to be evergreen. Things like spruces, pines, and firs here. And then deciduous trees, which shed their leaves every year. Things like oaks, maples. This is a sugar maple, and other kind of trees there. You can see where our temperate forests are in the world. We're going to talk about the temperate deciduous forest a little bit more specifically. Compared to taiga, these have warmer winters and longer summers. They have broad, thin leaves. They have with large surface area to help them absorb the maximum amount of light. And inside of here we have bears, wolves, white-tailed deer, opossums, salamanders, tortoises, frogs. All of these kind of animals present. Our next biome is the taiga, and this is one that is occurring between temperate forests and the tundra. Something unique about the taiga is it's only found in the northern hemisphere. There is no taiga in the south hemisphere. This exists between the areas of 50 degrees north and 60 degrees north latitude. It's this green up here. It's a really big biome. And even though these areas still have long winters and a lot of snow, this snow is covering the ground and protecting it from freezing, unlike the tundra, which is kind of more exposed and it's more hospitable to plant life. Lots of organisms call the taiga home. We have coniferous trees here at the taiga, and they have those waxy, needle-shaped leaves that stay on the tree year-round. The reason that they're shaped like needles are to prevent water loss. They're also that wax is to prevent water loss. Some animal species that enjoy these areas are things like moose, bear, wolves, caribou, lynxes, hares, river otters, uh, some fish, some goshawks, spotted salamanders, minks. Many species in this area are going to hibernate, and this usually will happen during the 6 to 8 cold months of the year that this area receives. So still pretty cold, but warmer than the tundra. All right, next biome is the temperate grassland. This usually forms in the interior of continents at the same latitude as temperate deciduous forests. These areas are too dry to support trees, though. So on the map here, you can see that there's kind of this in the middle of continents. These areas have rich, very fertile soil. And in areas that were undisturbed by humans, we have large grazing herds, such as the North American bison, that can kind of inhabit these areas. There are some interactions inside grasslands that are kind of unique. So the grasses are able to and have developed kind of ways to survive being eaten all the way down to just about the roots, and so they can survive this repeated grazing. They also, the grasses are able to survive wildfires as that wildfire burns everything. It burns so fast that it doesn't burn underground. And so those roots that are adapted to store a lot of material will grow after this fire passes. Because a lot of these were coastal areas at one point in time and are now been covered with plant life, and those plants have lived and died, they have very fertile soil. So much of this area, and you can see this map of the United States here, much of this area is farmland, and because of this fertile soil was converted to farmland. So we only have fragments of those grasslands now in the United States that are untouched, that haven't been. Uh, the species all changed, and we call these areas prairies in the United States. Our next biome is the savanna. These are tropical or temperate grasslands that have scattered deciduous trees and shrubs. You can kind of see they're more in the southern hemisphere here. But you get them in Africa, South America, Australia, and bits of Asia. They receive more water than deserts, but less water than either of the tropical or temperate forests. And because of this, they go through a alternating wet and dry season. So this large amount of grasses are able to support herbivores such as zebras, wildebeest, giraffes, gazelles, uh, rhinoceroses, buffalo, all these good things. And then carnivores like cheetahs and lions and leopards will feed on these herbivores, all this food. Um, with this area, some of the trees shed their leaves during the dry season to conserve water, and then they will grow their leaves back once it's the wet season again and it starts to rain. And then, like in the grasslands, the above ground part of grasses usually die, and then once there's rainfall, the roots grow again, and that plant starts over. Alright, our next biome is the chaparral, and this is a biome that is dominated by dense, spiny shrubs and has scattered coniferous trees. It's kind of like this picture down here. It has mild, rainy winters and hot, dry summers, and these summers are usually have periodic fires throughout them. It's located once again in the middle latitudes between 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south. There is a couple that's lower in the southern hemisphere, but these are primarily in coastal regions. The big chunks being like here around the Mediterranean. In the United States, we have some in Southern California. So what kind of organisms can we expect to find in the chaparral? Usually there's dry oil and there's short woody plants, things like the scrub oak down here. You'll also find plants with shallow root systems, things like sage and other kind of examples. You get monarch butterflies that feed on chaparral plants, and this is a very important region for them on their migration. But you also get lots of insects, and these insects are food to lizards, roadrunners like this guy here, and other predatory bird species that use these guys for food. So even though this area, once again like the deserts that we're going to talk about, looks kind of sparse, life still finds a way to inhabit this and diversify and have some species richness in here. Our next biome is the desert, and these are areas that receive an average of less than 9.9 inches or 25 centimeters of rain each year. They exist all over the world in North America, East Asia, Australia. And these guys aren't always hot. For example, the Great Basin in the United States is hot in the summer and freezes in the winter. And even in um, other deserts, this area does become colder at night, so like 30 degrees colder. The vegetation in these areas is often sparse and usually consists of plants that have adapted to drier climates, things like cactuses and shrubs. So who lives in the desert? Well, desert plants usually have very few stomata or only open at night to conserve water because it's hot in the day and cooler at night. Things like cactuses, you can see this cactus here has these ridges all over it. This allows it to expand and make those ridges smaller when it gets water, and it has spines to protect it from the herbivores of the area. This saguaro here is a large saguaro, and it can probably hold about 2,200 pounds of water when it is completely full. Desert animals usually avoid heat by hiding in the shade or burrowing in the ground. Some of them are only active at night. They include things like rattlesnakes and kit foxes, coyotes, sandcats, tortoises. There can be bighorn sheep in the more higher elevations. If you're in Australia, you've got Barbary ostrich there. If you're in more Africa, Asia, you've got camels. So there are lots of organisms that call the desert home and are adapted to live there. And the final thing we're going to talk about is just the association between precipitation and temperature and where your biome is. So most of these are kind of determined by a combination of rainfall and temperature. Those are the two most important things. And they exist in a range. So if you are really, really cold, area, almost down to freezing, right around 10 degrees Celsius, but have 100 centimeters of rain, you're a temperate deciduous forest. But if you're the same temperature, this 10, and you get less rain, now you're a chaparral or a shrubland. And if you get even less rain, you're a temperate grassland or cold desert. So these things kind of play together to create whatever, biome that you're getting these conditions of. Usually biomes will blend and you won't get like this is a desert and then it all of a sudden changes to a forest. Usually you go a desert and then there's a chaparral or a shrubland next to it, and then you start to get into a deciduous forest, and then maybe there's a temperate rainforest where it rains, like on the coast. So this is the end of 20.1. I will jump into 20.2.